I'm Jack Poulson. I'm from Philadelphia, and I'm a researcher and journalist, and several years ago I was a whistleblower. Yeah, so I was a computational and applied mathematician. I did physics simulation on government supercomputers. I spent maybe 3-4 years as an assistant professor. Had, maybe this is a bit of a trend, a bit of an ethical dispute with what it meant to be an academic working in the public interest. That led to some conflict. Frankly, I kind of gave my university the middle finger, and then I left, moved to Google, and if you have ethical disputes with your university, it may not be a shock to you that you have ethical disputes with a $1 trillion corporation. It wasn't just one, it was multiple. Maybe the first had to do with the usage of children's data in a research project. Another issue that frankly I didn't speak out on at the time was the militarization of corporate artificial intelligence, most notably through Project Maven. I ended up resigning over something else that was roughly the same time called Project Dragonfly, which was an internal project to build a modification of Google's search engine that would comply with the Chinese government's security directives. If you want to work in the public interest in some way, probably you're not going to be doing that if you're being paid a lot of money to do something against the public interest. At some point, maybe my inclination was to just get my feel-good sense from donations of parts of my salary to Doctors Without Borders and whatever journalism I liked, and then maybe I did some labor activism on the side as well, but there's only a certain amount of kind of contradiction of getting paid, frankly, a very high salary to kind of look the other way. I don't know how difficult it was. I think it's just my personality is the honest answer. That I just don't like being forced to be complicit in something I didn't want to be complicit. I very much value my independence. Yeah, obviously there's some consequence, but I'm not exactly gonna pretend to be some victim here. I think speaking out in tech is dramatically different than it is in other areas. Maybe the most recent epoch, if you will, started in 2013 with Amazon Web Services having a $600 million contract with the US intelligence community. It's called the Commercial Cloud Services, or C2S contract. And I think that really opened up the eyes to US tech companies that there were giant pots of money. Later, the $600 million C2S contract was replaced by actually a quote tens of billions dollar contract, which quite a lot more money, called the Commercial Cloud Enterprise. And actually, the early Amazon contract, C2S, just ended earlier this year. So C2E is kind of being kicked into gear, and that's 5 companies now. It's Amazon again, Microsoft, Google, Oracle, and IBM. And then also the Pentagon has a very similar cloud contract called the Joint Warfighting Cloud Capability Contract, or JWCC, and that's split between 4 US tech companies. It's that same 5 minus IBM, so Google, Oracle, Microsoft, Amazon. The Pentagon refers to as the third offset strategy. And boiled that down into text, it's the incorporation of US artificial intelligence and machine learning, and frankly just good software engineering into the US military is seen as the way that we compensate for having far less troops than China. All the US tech companies know that if they want to, say, compete effectively long-term with China, that is to become, close partners with the US security state. I also do kind of proactively research on just mapping out. Maybe you could boil it down to power, whether that's billionaires, companies, influential nonprofits, ambassadors, covert operations and the like. Yeah, I guess I think of that as a foundation to report on top of now. There's a question of what happens to a whistleblower years later. And I'll say my understanding now is it's very important that people find ways to move on. And I think there's a bit of a conflict there because to some degree people start to associate their brand and their identity with what they did years ago. And so, my sense is it's good to be able to do new things and to look forward and to learn to improve your craft, be more rigorous. So I created this nonprofit, and originally it was meant to be kind of advocacy on both human rights and speech, and then on drone warfare. There's a positive side, right? Now I get to do what I want. it's maybe harder, and you work much longer hours for much less money, but you also have your intellectual independence, and so I value that a lot.